Let's talk about AVA DogTag. And one of the big things that really concerns me about this game since its launch has been the recoil. They've completely revamped the recoil across the board on all the weapons, specifically my favorite gun being the Para. Now, I'll kind of go into more detail with the Para simply because I know that gun the best, and it'll be a good example for all of the changes that have occurred so far on DogTag. A lot of these changes have been for the worst, in my opinion. They've done a number of nerfs to this gun since the original game came out. So let's kind of go over those a little bit. Let's look at the stats first. So as you can see here, the hit damage is now 43 instead of 48. I think I don't know what these new numbers mean. These new numbers could mean something else entirely. It could be because the armor's different now. So I kind of take these stats with a grain of salt. But you can obviously tell here that the intent here is to kind of lower the damage, because they've also lowered the armor penetration and I think also the range. Although I think this used to be 60 and then the long... I don't know. I don't remember honestly off the top of my head how the range stat works. But when I see this, I go, okay, they've taken the damage and they've reduced it substantially. This is almost a 10%, about a 10% drop in damage based on this number. Whether or not this is accurate enough, we can't really tell yet because we don't have custom rooms. We haven't really done the numbers yet. But at first glance, the damage is lower. The other thing that you notice is there are a number of mods here. Now, all of these mods are the same on each of the guns, but you'll see that the burst barrel, long range barrel, and reinforced barrel all have trade-offs now. Whereas before it was kind of the long range barrel would have like less recoil or more recoil, and the reinforced barrel would have more recoil or more spread. But now it seems to be more damage based. So the long range barrel is now reducing damage and increasing range, and the reinforced barrel is now increasing damage and reducing range. And from experience, after playing a number of games, they feel about the same. It's almost as if the mods don't really matter, because you can see, I mean, one damage is not that much damage in the long run. Like, it's such an inconsequential number, whereas before you could actually really feel the difference there between damage barrels, Spets barrel, or long range barrel. Now it's just kind of like, you just kind of opt for the long range barrel, and I'll tell you why in a second here. But you can see the mods also kind of have nerfed this gun as well, because now they're not nearly as drastic. They're not nearly as impactful anymore. The other thing you notice, if you look down here, is the magazine capacity is now 20 instead of 25. So right off the bat, you're losing 5 bullets, which doesn't sound like a lot, but with a gun like this now only having 20 bullets, you can't really engage nearly as long as you could before, which has a huge impact on team play, has a huge impact on clutching in certain scenarios. You no longer have the capability to completely wipe a team as easily, whereas before you could take 25 bullets and wipe a team, which made this gun so dangerous. So I'm kind of on the fence about that. I understand where they're coming from in terms of magazine capacity, but when you combine the magazine capacity with all of the other things that they've nerfed, it's overbearing. There's way too many changes to this gun right now in this current state. There is this magazine replacement thing, which adds 2 extra bullets, so I don't, like, obviously you would opt for that because you need to have as many bullets as possible, especially on a gun with a magazine capacity this low. And a lot of the other mods are the same as before. It's just, I guess the other thing I should mention here is that you'll notice these stats are missing for the zoom and the accuracy for the zoom. That's because without a scope, there is no iron sight zoom anymore on this gun, which is another huge nerf. The original gun, when you would zoom in, you would be more accurate, but the trade-off was you would have more recoil and less bloom. Now that option is just completely gone from the gun. Now you have to use an iron sight to get that similar effect. And I honestly can't say I've used either of these on the weapon yet, but I would assume that it's very similar to the original game, where the iron sights are just kind of crap and not really that useful. And they kind of just take up some of the space on the screen that you would otherwise want to have freed up so that you can see more. So the other thing that I should mention is across the board, every gun has a lot more damage drop off. So naturally, you'll opt for the long range barrel because the damage drop off in this game is insane now. You no longer can headshot across the map. The headshot distance for the Para, I think, is 10 meters at the most from my testing, whereas before it was 18. That's since been reduced since more helmets came out and whatnot. But right now, with a base helmet, it's 10 meters. So your ability to headshot people at long range is not possible anymore. It's just not there. You can't really do it. And chest shots in general, everything just feels like you have less impact at long range now with the rifles, which is kind of a shame because now with that combined with some other things that have been changed across the board, it makes long range gunplay just very frustrating. So the other thing that they've kind of reduced, which is good, but they need to just remove it entirely, is aim punch. I still notice it. It still has a huge effect on my gameplay. They need to just take it out of the game. I don't understand. I think the only thing that would even make sense would be like a headshot aim punch, but right now there's still aim punch on the chest, which makes aiming that much harder, and aim punch just has no place in competitive play. It shouldn't exist. The only time I'd like to see aim punch is on snipers, because snipers in this game are currently way overpowered. They need, and I think they do have aim punch from my experience, but as far as aim punch is concerned, it should only be on the snipers. It should not be on any of the other classes. It just shouldn't exist. Like there's no point for it. Tagging, I'm kind of on the fence about. Tagging is where you get shot and your character can't move nearly as fast. I kind of don't want that either, but I think that might be necessary to balance things out a little bit. And I think that should be based on damage. But that's just my personal input. I don't really know. There's so many variables in the game right now that I think this game just needs a lot more testing to be done to really fine-tune a lot of these aspects. So the final thing that really bothers me is, and this is for every gun, this is not just for the Para, this is for literally every gun, every rifle, and from what I can see, the point man guns as well, is the recoil system in the game has been completely changed. From my understanding, it feels like they doubled the amount of recoil and recoil decay. So let's go in game real quick. This is the test room that they added, which is kind of nifty, but you can't really crouch shoot now, which is kind of weird, so I don't know why these fences are here. But I digress. So recoil is the amount that goes up after you fire your bullet, and recoil decay is the recoil decay speed is the amount that it goes down, how fast it goes back down to center. So if you spray your gun, you can see the recoil climb in AVA is almost double from the original game, whereas before it would go up and then it would cap out right here, and then it would just go back and forth. Now it just continuously climbs. There is a cap all the way at the top after about 20 bullets, I would say. Right here is the cap. And you can see the climb is just insane now. It's almost double the recoil as before. And the other thing you notice is the recoil decay speed is about twice as fast as well. So you'll notice if I spray, look how fast it comes back down. That's so fast. Whereas before it would be about that same speed, but with about this much recoil. So now, the reason why that's important is because when you're in a gunfight and you're shooting at people and you're trying to tap them, look what happens. I'm trying to control the recoil. Look how far down my crosshair goes. I'm all the way at the ground now after trying to control this spread. So after doing that for like 6 bullets, your crosshair's down here. So now you have to recorrect back to center to re-engage the enemy. Whereas before, because the recoil decay was slower, you could adjust it more fluently. It just felt more natural to readjust. Whereas now, it's like you're trying to control this, and then you're all the way down here, which just feels so strange. And I feel like the reason they're trying to incorporate this much recoil is because they're trying to copy CS, or they're trying to do something similar to CS. But the problem with that is that the view kick animation in this game is tied to the crosshair, whereas in CS, it's unlocked from the crosshair, so the bullets go above. So there's way less view kick in CSGO. There's still view kick, but there's a lot less view kick in CSGO, and it's not tied to the crosshair. So what happens is, in this game, because it's tied to the crosshair, because the bullets go exactly where the crosshair is located, you have to correct so much more in this game after each engagement. And that really just ruins the gameplay across the board. And a lot of people might not understand that that's why the game feels so strange right now, is because there's just so much more recoil and so much more recoil decay speed as before. So it just makes everything just kind of feel weird. It's not normal. It doesn't feel right. So that's not just for this gun. That's for literally every gun. So if I pull out the AK, it's got almost double the recoil from before, and it's got twice as much recoil decay as before as well. So this is every gun. Every gun has this. Look how fast that went back down. That went back down so fast. So what happens is when you're moving and shooting, now you're down here. And it just, it makes it so awkward, and that's for every gun. I noticed, and the reason why I noticed that was because Groza is one of my favorite guns, and this gun has almost double the recoil from before, and the decay speed was also double. This is crouching, by the way. Like, normally, you're trying to control it, and then it's all the way down here. And this is a gun that didn't have that much recoil in the original game. It had the same side-to-side recoil pattern, but not nearly as much climb or as much decay speed. And it's just really frustrating to play this game right now when it's like this. M14, same thing. Like, there's not a lot of spread, but because there's so much recoil, I'm aiming down here. So if I'm trying to engage, let's say this guy, and then I go to re-engage this guy, I have to fight the decay while also trying to re-engage and aim. So it just feels so off. It feels so clunky that it's just hard to, like, whereas before you could shoot this guy and then shoot this guy, and you wouldn't have to worry about the decay so much. Now it's just so prevalent that I'm fighting the drop and then re-correcting again. It makes it so bad. So that's kind of the big thing that's really holding this game back right now is that change. I don't know why they changed it. I think they just wanted to kind of make the game feel more quote-unquote skill-based, when in fact this is making the game and the engagements way more random. Speaking of random, there are a couple other things that I don't really like about this game that I might go into detail in another video, but the arms and the chest multipliers are different. So when you're engaging someone at the chest level, it can take between 3 to 5 bullets to kill someone, just because of the randomness of the recoil, combined with the spread, combined with the multiplier of, oh, I hit his hand instead of his chest, even though I was aiming for his chest. So it's literally like coin flip fights half the time, because it comes down to, oh, who hit the chest more than the hand, if both of you are just aiming for torso. Headshots still have an impact in this game because of the aim punch and everything, but with a high-powered rifle, you're pretty much neutered now, because you can't one-shot people past 10 feet, 10 meters. So these guns have just been nerfed across the board. And I'm okay with making things a little bit more balanced, don't get me wrong, but when you do all of the things that I just mentioned, and you do that to a certain category of weapons, it's almost as if they're not testing their game, because now it's like these guns are not that playable anymore. Like, sure, you can try to have fun with this, but you're not going to, because it's just, you don't feel like you have control anymore. Everything just feels so random. Like, I'm trying to spread for his head, and look at how many bullets missed. I'm literally just trying to tap his head, and I can't control it. Whereas before, I could easily control that if I just, like, modulated my speed. But now it's just so much more difficult. So those are kind of my big complaints right now with the game in terms of the gunplay. I really don't like where they're going with this. I wish they would just revert back to the original AVA's recoil system, because that's what everyone remembered. That's what everyone got used to. I don't think anyone really advocated for this. This is just kind of like a weird, why did you do this thing? Like, if they're really listening to the community, they need to listen to everyone, not just a certain set of people. And I mean, I'm one of those people, but I think I speak for the community when I say that the gunplay just doesn't feel that great. It's not what we want, and I wish they would change it. Am I nitpicking too hard, or do you guys kind of agree that these changes are too dramatic? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. and I'll see you guys next time.